Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening to everyone. Let's begin with Kitab Al-Fatiha. Okay, inshallah, tonight we will continue our discussion on topic number 6, which is freedom of information. This will be relatively a short topic, so inshallah we will be able to finish quite fast tonight. Okay, freedom of information. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
Yes, Doctor.
Okay. Okay, if you still recall, in the previous lecture, we talked about freedom of speech and then how that has transcended into the digital world. And we can see that from the decisions of the courts have no trouble to interpret the provisions of our constitution to include digital speech or digital freedom of expression. So, in this topic, we will expand a little bit further on the freedom of speech too, because freedom of speech in the international law, it does not only talk about your right to speak out or your right to opinion, but if we look at Article 19 of UDHR or ICCPR, we can see that the freedom basically comes together with the right to get information, the right to obtain information. So this is where we try to dig a little bit further on the extension of right to free speech that makes it the right to information or your freedom of information. Please take note that in some countries, like Australia, like Singapore, if I'm not mistaken, they have Freedom of Information Act. So it means that what is freedom of information? This is not basically it's a right to know. But when we talk about freedom of information law, it usually refers to the law which allows citizens to inquire into information that is being withheld by the government. So usually we are talking about documents. Sometimes they may be secret documents. They may be documents which are not labeled as secret. So it is being in the possession of the government, and you want to know about certain thing that the government is withholding. So maybe you want to know about this particular $1 billion contract. So you want to know what is the agreement that the government has signed with some maybe third party. So this is the right of information that the citizen can request. There is a procedure provided under the law that you can request to the government, maybe a state government or even federal government. Okay, you want access to this document. That document might not be in the website, so it's not in the public domain. So you want to see this, and then after they have received your request, they may process, and within certain time frame, they will allow you to have a look at the document. So that basically that is the whole idea about freedom of information. In Malaysia, we don't have a Freedom of Information Act, but there has been in the states, in the state of Penang and Selangor, there are statutes which there are enactments which introduces this freedom of information law. So briefly, we talk about the need for information as in a democratic country, the need for free flow of information is very important. At the time when I prepared this slide, we are still 2019 or 2020. So now we are 2021. I would like to ask the class, what do you think about Vision 2020? Whether, these were, I think those who, if you read the book, I think chapter 2, there are this detailed discussion on the challenges if we want to realize this vision, there are these challenges that has been highlighted when it was introduced 30 years back. These were the challenges. We know that these challenges are still ongoing. So what do you think as, law students of 2021, do you think the vision has been achieved? Any comments?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. Number one. What did you imagine 2020 is going to be? We didn't know that this pandemic is going to come, of course. But what did you imagine, and as opposed to what happens today, lah?
Well,
Maybe I can.
When I was a kid, I imagined that we're going to have a flying car.
That's common, flying cars. Yeah.
And then I also, but one thing that I say to myself as a kid, that I'm going to learn more in using technology, in a sense where we're going to use like iPad or laptop during studies. And well, I guess that kind of happened because now I'm more reliant on like my laptop and my iPad rather than my notebook. Those kind of things does happen. But yeah, the thing with the flying car, it's not going to work, I think.
Thank you, Izrin. We do have drones, but they are not yet flying cars lah. Flying small helicopters. But that's something. And any other response? What do you think of Vision 2020? Now we have Vision 2030, which is claimed to subscribe or trying to link. It's one way of realizing the SDG. So as they're trying to link that, but we know that it's a 10-year kind of vision, and so that has yet to be. People talk about it, but maybe because it's still in the early stage. Yeah? Any other response on Vision 2020?
I think when I was back then, when I was still a kid, first hearing about this Wawasan 2020, I imagine like there would be not much difference between countryside. I don't think that they would be countryside as much compared to during that time. But now the gap is just getting bigger. So it's like the opposite of what I imagined 2020 would be.
Countryside, what do you mean by the gap to Adeline?
I mean by economically, the financial gap between people that is residing in the countryside, the rate of development there, and first, most importantly, I think that the education.
Okay, thank you for the response. I mean, we still a lot of issues, a lot of things to do. I mean, the challenges are still there. But we don't deny that 30 years back, there has been substantial development in many areas of the society. It's just that 30 years back, the challenges were different. Now, the challenges is getting, I think, more challenging. We have, society as well as technology is developing. But we are facing perhaps different sets of challenges. Talking about this is lagi 1 jam pun tak habis lah. So in a way, we hope that in years to come, of course, technology, perhaps COVID has made this a lot faster. That's something to ponder lah. But we hope that the real the lofty vision or the ideas can be realized within perhaps within 10 or 20 years to come. We never know in another 10 to 20 years what other challenges or new challenges that we will encounter. I mean, when you all graduate in perhaps 2 or 3 years time, the situation may be different from 10 years back or 20 years back. So with the coming of all this, technology and so on, people are now talking about having AI judges or AI lawyers as something to be concerned about. So yeah, different challenges lah for different generations, but we hope that we are able to remain competitive, remain resilient, inshallah. So a little bit of history. Kasni, I don't want to get too much on the history, but basically when we talk about freedom of information, it was recognized since the first United Nations Assembly. So it's also called as the fundamental human right and touchstone of all freedom. And then it is codified and codified in the UDHR and ICCPR. If we look at Article 19, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, if we look at the words, everyone has this is the exact word, exact phrase from Article 19. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. In my book, I try to elaborate further on the difference between opinion and expression. This includes freedom to hold opinion. Opinion here, your opinion can also mean your speech. Freedom of speech, which without interference, and to seek, receive, and impart information. This part was argued to be the part where freedom of information was recognized. To receive, and you not only to receive information, you also have the right to impart information and ideas, and this can be done through any media and regardless any frontiers. As early as 1948, these words are already here and has inspired many constitutions around the world. If we look at ICCPR similarly, but the wordings are pretty similar, but they get a little bit more detail. You have the right to freedom of expression. This right include freedom to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas of all kinds, blah, blah, blah. Of course, ideas and whatnot, these are the general provisions of human rights. Okay? But when it comes to illegal content, anything which is illegal, then of course there will be a proviso, an exception to this general rule. Okay, coming down to Malaysia, freedom of information in Malaysia, you will not find any provision specifically in the constitution talking about freedom of information. The closest that you can try to link is Article 10, which talks about freedom of speech and expression. So this is the exact words from Article 10. So every citizen has the right to freedom of speech and expression, and from here there has been attempts by lawyers in trying to they try to compare. Okay, we have a word expression here, free speech and expression, and usually when we refer to international documents, it means that expression comes together with the right to information. So in several cases, they try to adapt this, and they try to bring this to the attention of the court. Macam dalam case Harith Fatil, this one, Minister of Energy, as well as Harith Fatilah case. The lawyers try to bring this interpretation. So before I go to that, to those cases, so just to let you know that it's not here in the provision of the Malaysian Constitution. So we can see that it comes to the question of whether the Malaysian Constitution recognize the right to information for the citizen, whether we can exercise this right. Remember, freedom of information is you can have it's not the same as freedom of expression. It is more linked towards the right to seek information in the form of documents, usually, in which the government withheld. They're in the possession of the government. So you are asking for this information. So state governments such as Selangor, Penang, and Penang, they have developed and enforced freedom of information enactments since early 2010. So we'll take a look at these two enactments. So until now, even when PH Pakatan Harapan government took over, they had the idea of enacting the Freedom of Information Act. Tapi rasanya tak ke mana, tak jalan. The draft act to didn't go through lah. I'm not sure to what extent, but they had this in the opposition states back then. But now, something like 2018, when they become the government, the proposal to move FOI into an act, it as a federal act, didn't go through. Perhaps because too busy. Okay. So now looking at Selangor, so in Selangor there is this Freedom of Information Act. So this is enacted, gazetted 2011. Okay, so Section 5 of the enactment provides, enactment applies in Selangor only. So it provides any person with the right to information, access to information. Any person may be given access to information made by every department that refers to the state government. So if the information sought to be accessed by any person is contained in the document disclosure of which is subject to any written law, access to such information shall be subject to such written law. It means that if the document is there is some requirements to under the law to release this document, you have to follow what the law to. If let's say the law says it's confidential, it's under OSA, then meaning you cannot release the document. So you can request, tapi it's subject to this written law. So if it's classified as OSA, meaning it cannot be simply released to the general public. The case of Minister of Energy and Malaysian Trade Union Congress. This is an example of the trade union asking for government access to government document, which is labeled as secret. So at 2004, government of State of Selangor, federal government and Syabas, they enter into this tripartite agreement whereby Syabas was granted this 30 years concession to supply treated water to State of Selangor and Federal Territory. There is a certain water tariff was provided. So under this concession agreement, it was stated there that Syabas was entitled to increase water tariff if they managed to achieve 5% reduction in non-revenue water. Okay. Subsequently, Syabas applied. They said that they have they got this 5% reduction. They achieved this, and then they want to apply for increase in water tariff. Increase in water tariff means that your bill will go up lah, kan? So based on audit report, the auditor confirmed that Syabas had achieved this 5% reduction in non-revenue water. So later, Minister announced that Syabas had met this performance target, and then they are eligible to a 15% increase in water tariff. But the Malaysian Trade Union Congress, being a trade union, they request the minister to furnish them with a copy of this concession agreement and the audit report. But the minister refused to go along with MTUC request. So they say that this is official secret documents. So MTUC and other respondents, they apply for judicial review against the minister's refusal. They are saying here that this is the part when they try to incorporate, they try to ask the court to recognize that Malaysia has the right to freedom of information. But the lawyers refer to the situation in India as well as Australia, kalau tak salah. Here, India. But India, if you see the words India and Australia, they have specifically Freedom of Information Act as a federal legislation. So in this case, they try to refer to this and say that we should have similar approach in Malaysia. But the court say that there is no such federal law in Malaysia which allows the public to have such access. So the court held that the minister cannot be compelled to accede to the request. So this refusal was not in breach of any fundamental right or any legal right of the MTUC or any parties. Another case, Haris Fatilah, also concerning similar interpretation. Here it was, they tried to apply for the appellant is seeking to obtain information pertaining to proposed delimitation of parliamentary and state constituencies. So they minta this particular information, but the approach is similar, meaning they're trying to refer to Indian, Canadian constitution, but in this part of the countries, they have this legislated properly as a Right to Information Act. So you can, you clearly have the right now. So in this, I just would like to bring your attention to this part. This is what has been said by the court, particularly Justice Raja Azlan Shah. He said that whatever may be said of other constitutions, they are ultimately of little assistance to us, because our constitution now stands in its own right, and it is in the end the wording of our constitution itself that is to be interpreted and applied, and this wording can never be overridden by the extraneous principles of other constitutions. So he also said that the ultimate touchstone of constitutionality is the constitution itself and not any general principle outside of it. So whatever, meaning that the lesson here is that if we want to interpret our constitution, we don't look for interpretations from outside of the federal constitution, but it is within the framework of the constitution itself. So yeah, so because of that, under the pretext of freedom of information, in Malaysia, it's clear that the federal law, as far as the federal law is concerned, we don't recognize this as a right which the people can enforce or can claim. Yeah. Okay. So that's the whole idea. But we know that in those two states, Penang and Selangor, the enactments are still enforceable. You can try to Google these two provisions. It comes together with forms as well. There are forms attached at the back of the statute, yeah, at the back of the enactment. So people who wishes to access document, they can fill up this form and submit. But I'm not particularly sure to what extent people are aware about this enactment, and to what extent people are actually exercising their right to know. in Selangor, in Penang. Maybe you can try to do this as your project to find out. Sebab kadang-kadang kan bila benda tak ada orang suruh buat. Bila benda dah ada, things are there. To what extent people are taking advantage to use it to properly, to get appropriate information or real information. Furthermore, in the digital world, social media world now, people read I hope you are not, but people can get confused just by reading headlines. So why bother queuing up at the government office when you can just read headlines kan faster, lepas tu semua baca fake news. So, tapi people are easily confused with digital news lah. Sometimes the headlines are causing the confusion. So that's the idea about FOI in Malaysia. We hope that soon it can materialize into a proper statute. But the next part of the slides will talk about in a freedom of information law. These are the things that should be implemented if we were to have FOI law. So information should be the oxygen of democracy. We're talking about democracy all the time, but when people request for information, it should be made available. And of course, better information flow can promote and enhance government efficiency and effectiveness. Why I discuss this FOI topic? Because most of the information being withheld by the government now is in the process of being digitized. We are looking at, inshallah, we're looking at a future of big data. I'm sure you heard of this big data, whereby many of our information is being stored by contohnya macam health information, our education, many of our sensitive information is being withheld by the government. I think one of the example is COVID-19 data. So many data now in the MySejahtera. So this can we are looking at the future of information which is being made digitized, digitalization. So we need to be aware about this right to information as something that it can be part of improving democracy. So the principles under FOI, there are several principles I just like to highlight to you. If any good FOI legislation should have, meaning, for example, principle 1, any FOI law should promote maximum disclosure. So if you want to disclose something, it should be a maximum disclosure. And if you cannot, let's say the government cannot disclose certain things, the reason for not being able to disclose should be told as well. You cannot disclose this because it's the law says that it's official secret. Meaning, you have to tell. There is no silent treatment under FOI law, or maybe no response. Tanya tak ada respon, senyap. So under the FOI law, maximum disclosure is the main principle, and then obligation to publish. The government department or even any organizations adapting FOI law must have this obligation to publish. At the moment, we are looking at kalau macam the companies in Malaysia, companies listed in Bursa Malaysia, for example, they are big companies kan. They have the obligation to publish annual reports. So people or the investors and shareholders, they know about any issues concerning the company. So they have to know, and these reports will highlight what are the financial standings, what are the issues, and so on. But for public bodies, this is not yet the case. Public agencies, they are not yet under an obligation to publish annual reports, but some have made this good governance initiative lah. We can find other certain government departments, they make it a practice. They publish annual reports. Why annual reports? Because this is the key documents that informs the public what are the what is going on in the company and so on lah. So because this is not an obligation, you see a lot of controversy. Suddenly there's controversy about this government department, that controversy. There is people allegedly doing this and that. So this can be minimized if we adhere, or at least we introduce freedom of information requirement as part of an obligation for public body. It also should promote open government. Public body must actively promote open government, not a closed kind of government. And then if the freedom of information law would like to limit, or would like to have some kind of exception, in some exception, certain situation, they say they want to introduce, okay, in this situation, we can restrict the right to information. So if the parliament wants to do this, the scope of the limitation or the scope of exception should be limited. Katalah example, we have a right to information in Malaysia, but in the situation where the documents are classified as official secret, then you cannot request. Or maybe upon checking that the particular document, it is found that this document it contains national information concerning national security. So information concerning national security, if you leak it to the public, it may cause confusion, it may cause unnecessary attention, blah blah blah. So maybe the law must specifically limit, if you want to introduce some kind of exception in the FOI law, the scope is strictly limited to certain categories lah. And then in order to apply for the information, the processes must facilitate access. So you must, if you want to request this information, it should be processed rapidly and fairly. Independent review of any refusal should be available. So if bukannya you submit the request, you wait until forever pun no news. Let's say there are refusal from the government department, then you can request for review of the decision. So bila you request, suddenly the office decided not to release the information to you. You should be able to request for review of the decision. So that is one of the good principles lah. Cost. Sometimes people might be wondering, we want to request something and then we have to pay. If the cost to get this information is so high, then in the first place it is going to deter people from making applications to request information. If it's too excessive, so it should not be too expensive lah. Yeah. There might be some costs, maybe administrative costs, making copies of the document and so on, but it should not be too excessive. And then meetings of public bodies should be open to the public. This is one of the principles, but depends. Some public bodies they prefer not to because of confidential and so on. So these are just some of the good principles lah. Okay, disclosure takes precedent. Laws which are inconsistent with the principle of maximum disclosure should be amended or repealed. Yeah. And there should also be protection for whistleblower. Individual who release information on wrongdoing, for example, whistleblower must be protected. Malaysia has Whistleblower Protection Act, yeah. So whistleblowers can seek protection under the Whistleblower Act, yeah. So in summary, these are the good principles of FOI law. So hopefully we will see some development in this area soon. If you know Malaysia introduce this FOI law, then it will gel. It will be linked together with the digitization effort that is also ongoing from time to time. Then, okay, I guess that is the end of the slide. Any question? So in summary, freedom of information is a right which stems from freedom of expression. We can see from international documents, it is together. I mean, it's there together. In some countries, they already legislate this as part of their federal laws. But in our country, this is yet to be a federal law. But those two states have enacted freedom of information in that manner. So in summary, I think this is a good initiative to complement to improve the state of democracy in the country. Right. Any question before we call it a day? Okay, Tika.
Sir,
Yeah, Farhana.
I then have a question. Like, kan freedom of information ni subjected to the approval in enactment of selama it's subjected to approval, but why can it be why can it be made to like allow access to, for example, like researchers, so that they can make innovations and they can make solutions to some of the problems that we face?
Because the documents withheld by the government, these documents are not publicly available information.
Sir, you muted. Sir, you are on mute.
Sorry. Because the documents that is being withheld by the government, they are not publicly available information. So, if, for example, research purposes, kalau kita nak this information, we have to request from these particular departments, and then the practice now is that it's totally up to their discretion lah. If they want, to a certain extent, if they want to share, they can share. But let's say if researchers are doing a particular consultation or particular job to help the government to katalah, as far as law is concerned, we help governments to do research to improve the law or something like that. So they can release the information, but they need those researchers to sign non-disclosure agreements. So okay, dia akan release information tu, tapi orang yang tahu ni kena sign lah non-disclosure agreement. So they will know, and then they will help the government to improve research and so on lah. Boleh lah. But these are done in a controlled environment lah. Meaning it's not leaked to the newspaper and so on. So that's the situation lah. Maknanya certain things they don't disclose for particular reasons lah.
Alright, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Fana. Okay, if there's no further question, inshallah, next topic we will move on to topic 7, which is on online defamation. So our next class will be on because this week tak ada class. Next week will be mid-sem break. So we will meet again on the 3rd of December. 10th of December. Am I correct? 8th of December. Kan?
Yes, sir. Yes.
8th of December. I am not sure about your other classes like UNGAS or whatnot, sebab those UNGAS courses they are not part of ICOL kan. So tak tahu dia orang punya kalender macam mana. But for ICOL 29th until 3rd of December tu will be the mid-sem break lah. So inshallah I'll see you on the 8th. I think last group presented was group 5. I think tak sempat lah group 6 and 7 we want to cramp it together. Unless group 6 members don't have anything at 6 PM, then we can just extend a little bit until 6:15 for those who group 6 kita ada group 7 kan. Group 6 can you respond sikit whether you still want to do it on the 8th of December? Kalau yeah.
I think can we discuss among us first and then we get back to you.
Bukan group 6, group 7, sorry, group 7.
Oh, group 7.
Group 6 memang confirm you will present first, but group 7, do you group 7 members are all here? It's still okay lah, meaning we can still have your presentation on 15, no problem lah. Group 7, can you respond whether you want to still present on the 8th? Tapi confirm we will have to extend the class a little bit until 6:15 maybe. If you don't have anything, it's fine. Group 7 members are here?
Yes, sir.
Macam mana?
Can we discuss?
You can discuss first.
Yeah.
Okay, then tentatively for group 6 we confirm lah. You can proceed on the 8th lah. Tapi group 7 tu kita tengok dulu, ya. Tapi you just let me know lah. Nanti you just text me if everyone in the group is okay to just present on 8th, then kita proceed je lah. Tapi if you have something else or at 6 o'clock, maybe you have class ke apa ke, we can defer to 15 lah. Okay, so take care, stay safe. Let's close with tasbih kafarah. Thank you. Assalamualaikum. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Good night.
Thank you.